There we go. Good afternoon, everybody who is joining us. Always a relief to see the participant numbers starting to climb and know that the webinar has started correctly. Welcome to the Future of Accountancy Trends for 2024, presented by myself, Tony Stevenson, and an all-star panel this afternoon. I'll just give everyone a moment or two to sort of get yourself settled, get your cups of tea sorted, and the numbers are still continuing to climb. We have a little minor technical difficulties in the background as well, so I'm going to stall for a little while Glenn gets himself back online. While we do that, I shall start to go through the housekeeping and the agenda for this afternoon. So we just as a very brief and simple summary of what we're going to be doing, bit of housekeeping at the start, couple of minutes or two just setting the scene. And then the bulk of today's session, which will be as much of it as possible, will be the panel discussion where we talk about the trends that we expect to see coming, and what they're going to mean for the profession. We will have an opportunity for a little bit of Q&A at the end, possibly. And then afterwards there'll be a live demo. So how we run that is the bulk of the webinar will take place across the course of the hour. There is a mixture of people on today, some of whom are already FreeAgent partners and therefore probably don't need to spend the time to have a look at FreeAgent. And then there are a lot more who aren't FreeAgent partners. So if you are not a FreeAgent partner, then I would urge you to stick around at the end to watch the demo. It'll be just 10 minutes or so. Just quick look and feel, getting under the bonnet and just giving you an opportunity to see what FreeAgent's all about. And if not, then you're welcome to drop off if you don't need to see FreeAgent. A little bit of housekeeping. So today's session will be recorded. So I know that there will be people who need to drop off before the end. There will always be people who have arrived late as well. And if we don't get that question 5 times in the chat and the Q&A, I will be surprised, but no worries. We're all good. So yes, it will be recorded. You will get an email with the link to the recording, and you'll be able to access it freely through the FreeAgent website as well. So we have the chat going and we have the Q&A going. So in the chat, if you want to pop in where you're dialing in from, that would be really appreciated. It really helps to get things started. If you want to use the chat box for just general commentary about what's going on, if you see people you recognize, say hello, all that kind of stuff, then that's absolutely fine. If you want to ask a specific question about something we're talking about, or about FreeAgent, or anything really, I mean, perhaps not where the toilets are because we're doing things virtually, but if you want to ask a specific question, please use the Q&A function, which is just next to the chat. The Q&A, the reason we use the Q&A is because it stores the questions there and they don't get lost in the thread of the chat, and then we can pull them out at the end if there's an opportunity for us to kind of go through a few questions on the topics that we've been discussed today. So if you want a specific question answered, use the Q&A. If you put it in the chat, then the likelihood is it will probably get missed. Onto our polite and respectful policy. Now, I am absolutely sure that nobody on the webinar today is going to be anything other than positive, upbeat, and buzzed about everything that we've got to talk about, which is exactly what we want from everybody. But on occasions, rare occasions, I might add, we have had a couple of people that have turned up wanting to throw digital rocks. Now, in fairness, that was predominantly at HMRC, but we have had to sort of exit people from webinars before, which is wild to have to say about an accounting technology webinar. But yeah, if you could keep things polite and respectful, that would be much appreciated. You will get warned. If you can't manage that, then we'll chuck you out. It's a bit like being at the cinema. If somebody's shouting and effing and blinding in the seat next to you, it kind of ruins your experience. So yeah, unfortunately, we have to have that in there. Trials and polls. So there'll be an interest poll, which will give us some opportunity to say what we think as an audience about the stuff that's coming. And then there'll be various opportunities for you to say that you would like someone from FreeAgent to get in touch with you. Please do engage with them. There's no, you're welcome to come and have a chat with us. If it's not right for you, then that's absolutely fine. But I would urge you to have that conversation, and you'll get the opportunity to just say, yes, I'd like to, and they'll come up various points through the webinar. And then, as I said earlier, we'll have a demo at the end of the webinar, which will be sort of 10 minutes of just having a quick look at FreeAgent for those of you that are new to the platform or new to FreeAgent generally. Or if you've not seen it for a while, then you might want to have a look at it again. It has changed quite a lot in the last few years. Cool. As we were discussing this just before we came online, today's webinar is CPD accredited, so you will get 1 credit, 1 point, 1 token, whichever your provider recognizes, for the hour of CPD today. In order to claim that, if you are attending live, then you'll get a webinar. You'll get a link afterwards in the follow-up email, which just says here you go. You can jump in and claim your CPD, just sort of answer a couple of questions, and then it gives you the certificate. And if you're not watching live, then obviously you'll need to watch the recording, and then you can get it that way. Cool. So some intros. So myself, I am Tony Stevenson, the Senior Digital Enablement Manager here at FreeAgent. So I've been with FreeAgent for about 5 years. I've been in the cloud accounting space for getting close to 10 now, which is quite a realization for me earlier in the year, that my earlier part of my career, the 9 years I spent in practice and industry, now balances out to the time that I've spent in the cloud accounting space. I used to work for Xero alongside Glen, one of our panelists today, which is how I've managed to hoodwink in someone of his stature onto today's webinar. But yeah, I'll be steering the ship, and I will pass over to our panelists to introduce themselves. So Ryan, if you wouldn't mind going first, and I do apologise, I didn't update that for FCAs. That's my first error, so apologies, mate.
No worries. I am an FCA. Ages ago I qualified. Now a small firm in South Essex, then worked in a top 20 firm, and then now moved to Scrutton Bland, which is a mid-tier firm in East Anglia. I head up the digital transformation arm called SB Digital, and for my sins, I run a podcast on all things, I guess, app advisory, digital transformation in the accounting space.
And if you haven't listened to Digitools in a Cruel World, I would thoroughly recommend it, for the tech and for the lols as well. It's very good. Rebecca, next, if you could introduce yourself and the various things that you do.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously I'm Rebecca. I'm the director of EME, or Accounting Made Easy. I also run Miss Finance tutorials on YouTube and on TikTok. So I answer a lot of questions from bookkeepers and accountants and work with them in that space, alongside running the practice. And I'm now going into my 17th year of experience in this industry. So yeah, excited for what 2024 has to offer.
Crazy. I don't know how Rebecca has any time to do anything other than work, because she has so many projects going on. She's everywhere. I'm sure a lot of you have come across her on social media. And I think he has disappeared again. Glen, are you still with us, mate? Or have you dropped to the bottom of the list? Hold on. He's there, but his camera's gone off. So Glen is having some technical challenges at the moment in the way of a power cut. So I will introduce Glen as best I can. So Glen is, I think, most famous for being the sales director at Xero. He was the sales director at Xero for around about 12 years, and took Xero from, I think he was employee number 2 or number 1, and took Xero all the way through to the monster that it is today, and I mean that in a good way. He saw all the evolution of himself and of the of the cloud accounting industry right up close, and has worked with hundreds, thousands of the practices up and down the country that adopted Xero. He then left and then went to work for Libio for a little while, and has done a bit of consulting recently, and now he is the Chief Revenue Officer at Dext. So I know Glen from my time at Xero, and he is a very knowledgeable chap, and I'm sure he will be on with us very shortly if he can. Cool. Right then, so we'll run our first poll. As I said, we know that there are people that will be on for the beginning and then perhaps have to drop off because the kids to go and get the kids from school or whatever. So hold on a second. I will launch the poll. Just bear with me a second. There we go. So if you would like to find out more about basically becoming a FreeAgent partner, if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant at practice, please tick yes. And we will make sure that somebody seamlessly gets in touch with you, and and that somebody is able to follow up with you after the webinar today, because we know that process can be challenging if you have to drop off and then go and find where you need to speak to somebody. So yeah, no obligations, but yeah, it was a good opportunity to make sure we capture everybody at the beginning of the webinar. And while that poll runs, I'll jump onto the next slide and just talk you through just a first slide about FreeAgent. And then we can move on to the core part of the webinar. So we are award-winning accounting and bookkeeping software. We focus very much on the micro end of the market. So kind of 0 to 10 employees, and that's starting to sort of creep up a little bigger with various bits of feature improvements that we have built out over the last year and that we've got coming up over the next couple of years. Our support is, I think it's fair to say, unrivaled. We get huge positive feedback about our support, the fact that you can call someone up and get stuck into finding out more about FreeAgent. Our mobile app is award-winning as well. We're a modest bunch at FreeAgent, but we quietly think it's comfortably the best in the business. And for those of you that are unaware, we're owned by NatWest Bank, so that plays out in a bunch of different ways for us internally, but essentially it means that you can have a free FreeAgent license if you have a NatWest Bank business bank account, for as long as you retain the account being open, and also you'll notice at the end there's an optional add-ons may be chargeable. So we have got an add-on or two where you can pay extra to have increased functionality around outside of the core product. HMRC recognised MTD compatible. We won the friendliest software of the year at the Luca Awards again this year for the 4th or 5th time or something. So people like dealing with us, which is very nice. I see the numbers have slowed on the poll, so I will end the poll. As I said, there'll be another opportunity later on to indicate your interest. Let's go into 2023. So just a brief summary of 2023, what we've seen. I think it could probably be summed up very, very briefly in that AI was 2023 was the year of AI in the world, but specifically in accountancy. We've delivered a number of kind of talks on our AI capability and and AI within the marketplace, and I think it's fair to say that it's dominated the headlines, and it's something that people are unsure about in some way or other a lot. And there's been all these new generative AI tools like ChatGPT and image creation tools and video creation tools and all this kind of stuff, and we're all trying to kind of work out how we fit in with that. So that's definitely the overarching and key headline trend of 2023. I think it's fair to say that there's a bunch of other things that sort of subplots that kicked around underneath there, but that was definitely the predominant trend. So without worrying too much about what we covered in 2023, I can see Glen again, and it seems like maybe his power's come back on. You'll have to go back and listen to the intro I did for you, mate, see whether it did you justice or not. And we'll run one more poll around the key challenges of what's coming in the industry this year. Let's launch this one. And then we'll get into the first topic while everybody does that. So there's a couple of questions on this one, I think. So yeah, if you can just flick them through, that would be great. And then while that runs, we'll jump into our first panel discussion. So trend 1, the talent crisis. So this is a trend that has sort of been bubbling around for some time in our profession. Where do we get good people? How do we make sure those people are good people? And this touches all aspects of of software, of accounting, of bookkeeping, all up and down our profession. So Rebecca, I want to start with you on this one, because you do a lot of work with the student kind of sector of our industry, and also the bookkeeping section of our industry as well. So I'm really keen on your thoughts on this idea of a talent crisis. Is there one? If there is, what can we do to solve it? Is it solvable? Should we all pack up and go home? What do you think?
Yeah, that would be one option. Yeah, so I think there is a talent crisis. I think there's a shortage of talented staff across both bookkeeping and accountancy. I don't think this is something that's happened overnight. I think it's something that's been going for a good decade or so, and that we haven't really addressed. And it's understandable why we've not addressed it as well as we could, because from my perspective, there's been constant changes, legislation changes. There's been, plenty of changes in tax and IFRS and reporting, etc. And, the use of AI that's been introduced, say, in the last sort of 3 to 5 years. So we're constantly trying to play catch up with all of that, whilst not necessarily addressing this issue with the talent crisis. And again, there's quite a few reasons why that's happened, I think. And you'll see it more now when you look at some of the other Facebook groups or on LinkedIn, people talking about not being able to hire staff in. And there's, again, quite a few reasons as to why. So I think just predominantly those that are working in practice don't make themselves attractive enough. The firms aren't making themselves attractive enough for the key talent to stay with them or to come to their firms. I think they're very much, in some cases, practicing outdated practices, you know, such as the old contracts that stated if you failed an exam, then you'd be fired, that we've all seen. They're not competitive enough, so they're not competitive, not necessarily on salary, but things like flexibility. So what I'm seeing is that there's been a drop in the number of students and number of individuals staying in the accounting industry as a whole, and actually going over to other industries such as like marketing and AI, because they're more attractive, because they're able to offer that flexibility or that salary that individuals are after. And obviously we're all feeling the squeeze with the economy, particularly over, again, the last sort of 5 years or so. But because there's not enough people coming into the industry and not enough people replacing the number of individuals who are looking to retire, we're facing this issue more so now. And I think those that were looking to retire circa 3 years ago and still are now have only delayed that following the delay of MTD ITSA. So we would have seen even more of an issue being brought forward if that wasn't the case. But yeah, I definitely think there is quite an issue that we need to tackle. But I think there's things that we can do about it, which is always the good news.
Okay, share. What do you think we can do about it?
So I think just as an industry as a whole, so this is not just, you know, particular to one sort of accountancy body, so not just the ICAW, ICB, AAT, CPA, etc. I think as a whole we need to showcase more what you can do with a career in bookkeeping and accounting, and not just, you know, highlighting, you know, data entry, etc., being able to show the commercial aspects of what we can do and how, as you say, you know, with the use of AI, what we can do with that and where that frees up time elsewhere to concentrate more on business, and that you can, you know, go into different areas of business. So you can go into forensic accounting, or you could go into financial planning, etc., whatever you want to do with a career in bookkeeping and accounting. But I just don't think, from my perspective, particularly over the last 5 years, I don't think we've done enough to showcase that. So I think it's a group effort to show where you can take that career, as opposed to just, yeah, what we've been doing in the past 5 years or so. But I think as well, we don't need to go along the lines of saying, well, in order to attract staff into your firm and talented staff, that you need to create, you know, high paying roles. I don't think that's the way forward. I think that's a really short-term way of approaching this. And instead offering flexibility for individuals, or, you know, giving back, or, you know, perhaps offering things like volunteer days, or, you know, maybe having a Friday off, but working longer hours in the week, for example, just to keep up with other industries, to attract those staff. So there's plenty of things that we can do that I just think we need to be a bit more proactive about. I don't know, Ryan, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I think it's an interesting one, Rebecca, in that you say it's about 10 years, which seems to align with Tony's comment on being the time cloud accounting has been around for. I think there has been a negative thing of cloud accounting is it portrayed itself to businesses that it was really easy to do your accounts now, and drove down the value of compliance for accountancy firms. Yeah. And so because of that, to chase, I guess, profit, accountancy firms had to, like, you know, minimize what they're paying their staff, or look to outsourcing, which then kind of dragged down over time the incentive to come into the accounting profession. So in a way, we could argue that cloud accounting and the benefits it's brought has also caused a roll-on effect of actually squeezing our marketplace. And yeah, we need to adapt to that. I think there's a, as you say, a reset in the market we need to do to show or to justify the value to businesses, which we are doing as an accounting profession. It's just taken a while to adapt to that. Do I think that's going to be resolved in 2024? No, I think we're still going to be fighting that battle. But there does seem to be, at least what I'm seeing, a realignment of us pushing back on clients and putting our prices up and going, no, this is actually the price that we need to charge, and not squeezing our profitability as much as we have been previously.
Well, one thing that I think I am seeing a bit more of a trend of, though, that I think is going to lean into 2024, is that there are a number of different practice owners and also institutes who are now really getting involved with going, into schools and colleges and talking about, you know, what it's like to work in practice or work in industry. So it seems that people are trying to make a bit of a push towards, you know, highlighting what you can do in this industry. But there's always more that we can do. But I don't think it's going to be fixed in 2024. Maybe, you know, these things take about 3 years to hit a bit of a momentum. So maybe 25, 26, which is crazy to say, but, you know.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in agreement that it is not a it's not a one-sided thing. So I think that you're right. I think there's an onus on the firms to put to create an attractive environment that is in line with other. You're not competing really against other accountancy firms, you're competing against other industries, you know, and it isn't necessarily about more money. Like, it's about paying a fair market rate, but it is about flexibility. It's about you know, it feeling like a modern place to work. You know, we know that there people are out there. You know, I see Rachel Harris has got her kind of waiting list for staff that were looking to work at Strivex, and it's, you know, 3 figures worth of people. There are people that want the jobs, but they want to work in that environment, not another environment that's not as favorable as that. Glenn, any thoughts from the tech side?
Just that I've been helping accounting firms with technology for about 20 years now, and 20 years ago, like, the person you spoke to would have been the IT manager and probably one of the partners responsible for IT who drew the short straw at one of the partners meetings. And now you very rarely speak to the IT director or manager, right? You're talking to the systems advisory team, the digital accountant, the cloud, whatever these titles are, right? So you can quite clearly see that the roles in the profession have fundamentally changed, like, and aggressively over the last 5 or 10 years, along the lines of what cloud accounting has done, right? Whether it's accounting or all the apps and the ecosystem around it, it's, in a positive way, being able to re-engineer the relationship lots of accountants have had with their clients. Equally, to re-engineer that relationship, you've had to re-engineer the skills that a lot of people have had, because most accountants, they're technically proficient, and that's how they're trained. But now, so because that customer contact seems to have increased, the amount of time you want to spend with your clients, like, no one's creating accounting firms these days that I see that go, we want 5,000 clients that just want like an annual relationship with us. People are like, I want 100 good clients that we can go and do more work for and charge them a higher fee. So I think a lot's changed, right? The landscape's changed from a tech perspective in the relationship. Equally, what's then got to catch up is the way that we train people to come on board an accounting firm to say, yes, you need to be technically great. Equally, do you know what? The harder skills to develop are what we would call the softer skills, the ability to have that conversation, to be able to guide and advise and coach people. And I've certainly not seen, like, where people go for that level of training or support to really round out their skill set.
There's definitely a lag in that sort of digital skill set, and you see it, like, firms like, there's no good people out there, and when you actually drill into it, what they mean is, I want to hire somebody who's got those skills, right? They want to hire like a Ryan or a Rebecca who knows this stuff, and they want to bring them in, but they probably want to bring them in on a salary that's kind of not not commensurate with the uniqueness of that skill set and the value that skill set adds. So I think there's an onus on you know, the folks to build those skills, and then to, you know, to carve themselves out that place in the market. And then there's also the onus on the firms to create an environment that people are, you know, buzzed about going to work in. I'm sure we could yarn on probably for the rest of the session about the talent crisis, because it is a big one. It ain't going away anytime soon, Rebecca. I think you're right, but we will skip on to the next trend, which Ryan is going to lead us off on. Consolidation. Now, he's very keen to point out that he did not mean consolidating accounts.
No,
his eyes lit up when we started talking about that. But we're talking about consolidation in the marketplace of firms, of apps, bigger groups forming, and the implications that has. So lead us off on this one, Ryan. What do we think is going to take place in 2024? What are you excited about?
Yeah, well, I guess to start with is to identify that things happen in cycles. So you'll get an emerging change, which then, you know, creates, I guess, a flux of things going into the market, and you get big diversity. And after that, when you've kind of had that instant change, things start to consolidate back down. And we had that, I guess, emergent change through cloud accounting, the likes of, you know, Xero, QuickBooks Online, FreeAgent, changing the way we operate. And the app stores, the app marketplaces that came along with that brought options. But then with that, you had a lot of investment, and that was kind of pulled back slightly from the marketplace. And with it, we're getting a consolidation. We saw that last year heavily with the payment side, or even this year in the payment side. And I think that's going to continue into 2024. You're going to get a lot of apps either being bought, acquired, and merging into one. And with that brings risk, because if you have invested in a relationship working with an app, you've got the risk that that app may disappear, or their future may pivot from what you'd invested in.
Yep.
And so I think as we as a profession kind of early on jumped onto certain pieces of software, certain apps to go, okay, well, this is the one we're going to work with. We need to just manage risk to some aspect, and go, maybe we won't put all our eggs in one basket. I think that's something definitely from a 2024 perspective. But we're also seeing that with accounting firms. So many are just fed up of, continuing to fight this battle, especially post-COVID. Or, as associated with the tank crisis, there's no one that's coming through to take the helm.
That as well,
so, you're getting this consolidation of accounting firms, a lot of investment in that area. And so where we had, I guess, a big diversity of new firms coming in, that's starting to consolidate down as well. So I think we're going to see generally 2024 will be a year of consolidation rather than divergence, but there will always be changes. We had last year, 2022 was a year of integrated payroll and HR. Had loads of systems come in and do that. I'm sure there will be a new buzz area for 2024, and we've got enough events, accounting conferences in the start of 2024 for us to learn all about those. But yeah, definitely, I think consolidation is going to be a key focus.
I reckon AML is going to be one, because Firm Check have just landed, and there's a couple of others that are starting to build it into their project. So that feels a hot topic at the moment. Suddenly firms have realised that there's a pain there, and that actually that way that they've done these things before was not great, and that they could do things slightly better. And I find that an interesting one. So when you're in the sales side of things, they talk about finding pain points, and it's so interesting what people's perception of pain is. And having implemented with accountants, I've been out, I remember this one, and there were two sessions, kind of like one after the other, and we were talking about the same kind of piece. It was moving data from one place to another, and the first guy was like, this is just absolutely unacceptable. It's such a terrible process, because when I bring it across, the column doesn't quite line up properly, and I don't really like the font, and it's just unusable because of it. And then the next firm that I went to, they were like, oh yeah, it's absolutely fine. So we download it, but it comes out in this horrible numbers sort of notepad version. So then we chuck it in somewhere else, and and then we use this mapping tool, which is basically somebody doing it manually, and then it kind of spits out into a CSV, and then we can upload it. It doesn't always upload properly, and there's usually a few errors we have to go through, but it's okay. It's not too bad. Okay, I'll pick the bones out of that one. Interesting. I think there's this consolidation everywhere you look, right? And I think it's an interesting topic. Glen, you work for Dext, which is owned by HG Capital. That's right, isn't it? Which is a consolidated software group. What are your thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, well, I guess there's two sides to this, right? There's the app consolidation, which is just the nature of business to a certain degree. The good thing about startups is that's where the innovation is typically born. You don't see a huge amount come out of the established larger businesses, right? It actually comes out of the smaller businesses, and a larger business goes, hey, I'd like a piece of that, and they go and acquire it, and then magically it slows down, right, on innovation. That's typically the route that you see. So it's tough when you're making a decision on an app that you want to pick, right, to solve a certain challenge you've got in the practice. And Ryan touched on payments, and I've got some good background there, and some really relevant some challenges. So that's a challenge, right? And that will happen. So the key is, I guess, you can only do your best, right, around due diligence to try and choose a solution that you think will last the test of time. And most of these startup apps, right, they're built for acquisition, because they're going to want to exit at some point, right? They've taken VC funding, they want their money back, right? So the nature is that's what's going to happen. So you kind of have to accept that that's the route, right? They're either going to go public, which is fairly limited. Right? Not many people will get that far, or they're going to be acquired at some point. So we see that. Private equity side's a little bit different because they work off of margins. So, right, you're trying to balance things out. So where you've seen private equity firms come in, and certainly in the accounting world as well, because if you're a private equity firm, if you look at a group of accounting firms, like that's a pretty safe bet. Like, you know that they're going to grow single figures, small double figures year on year, right? So you put your money in, you know you're going to get it back. Whereas if you go and put your money into a new piece of payments technology, do you know what? They could do like 4,000% growth in 2 years. They could equally just run out of cash within 6 months. Right? It's that balancing act there. So I think that as an accountant, right, and anyone buying tech, I buy lots of tech. I run a revenue team, right? I'm the easiest to sell to. You come to me with a new shiny piece of technology, I'll probably buy it. That isn't an invitation to like hammer my LinkedIn, by the way.
Bing, 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 bing.
Yeah, and it's like you buy this stuff. You've really got to understand what you're trying to solve. Why do you want to buy it? And then how do you implement it properly? And then if it gets acquired, right? You hope it gets acquired by somebody that you are relatively happy with, but you know that it's solving some problems for you. So make the most of the innovation that's in there in the early stages, because that might not always be the case.
Indeed, I think
the other bit is that the bigger players, as you say, are buying these up and coming or filling gaps in their own systems. And so where you had like Xero, QuickBooks Online, FreeAgent, Sage, they're kind of new, they're learning, and therefore they've not got as much functionality. They're now filling those holes, so you don't need as many apps to build into. I'm expecting 2024 to be one on inventory at some point because of acquisitions. I think that will be a big thing, at least towards the back end. But yeah, there's consolidation, I think, everywhere going on at the moment, and we'll obviously be wary of its impacts on us in our careers, and also on how we service clients.
Indeed.
I think that's my biggest issue, where if there's a particular app or software that you like and you've recommended to clients, and then it's either bought out or it goes the other way, which we've seen a couple of times this year. It's difficult then, you don't want to lose that trust with your client that you're saying, this app is great, etc. And then down the line there's either delays in additional functionality that has been promised, or other things going on. So it's one to watch for, definitely, in 24, I think.
There's been it's quite a smart way to sort of Trojan horse yourself into a new group of customers as well, right? So if you can see as a big sort of maybe bookkeeping tool or whatever it is that you want to kind of want to look at, if you're kind of like, do you know what, these smaller practices, or these are practices that we'd like to get into but they won't give us a time of day, if we buy 3 key apps that they already use, then they're now our customers without them having actually had to make that decision. We made the decision for them. It's a smart move, and I don't think we've seen the end of it. Definitely not. Trend 3, sorry, we couldn't not do it. AI. So we've talked about it a lot. Specifically, I've talked about it a lot. I've done a presentation at the ICAW. We've done a couple of webinars on it. Did one at the Accountex Virtual Summit, Accountex North, do another one next week. It's everywhere, right? And I think that my thoughts on it are that there's a lot of sort of fear and uncertainty around artificial intelligence, and that stick your thoughts in the chat, folks, if you want to. Really helps us to kind of gauge the feel of the room as well. We've had artificial intelligence embedded into FreeAgent for 3 or 4 years now, and it touches in various different forms around categorization, machine learning models, and that kind of stuff, and it's good. It's really good. But this generative AI has brought a brand new set of questions, and ultimately I think that the bits of advice that I would give are, sort of don't panic. This new thing hasn't necessarily come along and changed sort of where you want to get to as a business, but it might help to augment some of the stuff that some of the challenges that you're facing, might cause a shift down the line as to where you're looking to head. But don't adopt their mindset of like, I've got to go and buy an AI to do something. I don't know what, I've just been told I need to do it. We need to just kind of make sure that we review this stuff sensibly and realize that whilst it's incredibly powerful, it's not gonna replace human beings in entirety anytime soon. and we can use it very effectively to do a bunch of tasks. But I always use this example of this conversation I had with Jordan Vickery around sort of marketing, and he just started his agency, not Journey, the one he was in before, which I think he's still part of. And he said the standard conversation I have with accountants is smaller firms is, I've been told I need to do marketing. Okay, great. Why? I need more clients. Okay, well, how many clients can you reasonably onboard in a month? 2 or 3. How many are you onboarding currently? 2 or 3. So you don't need marketing then. So if you're already doing it, you don't need it. And it's just that they've heard they need it a lot, and actually they were kind of reassured and happy to be told, you know what, actually just carry on focusing on what you're trying to focus on, and focus on the real problems. So that's always my thoughts on it, is just, have a framework for working out how you do this stuff. We'll start with Glenn on this one. Thoughts, AI 2024?
Oh, yeah, a wide subject, right? The first thing I always point to, I think, is like not everything is AI that people tell you is AI, right? So it's always it's subjective, right? What it actually is. Look, I have a view that in 2024, right, it's unlikely that the average person like me is going to start picking up some form of AI and revolutionizing the way that I do my business, run my life, right? Actually, the next phase is how businesses are going to adopt this to deliver better functionality. So we use lots of actual generative AI within Dext, as you would imagine, right? Either through our precision product around data accuracy, or through the prepare product through data extraction and things like that. And look, extraction is a commodity at some point, right? It's just extracting information off of data. We don't own that, right? But actually the experience that you build around that as a software company is then important, right? So that extraction becomes a thing that you do to solve the problem that business owners and accountants and bookkeepers have. So yes, look, AI is not going away, right? It's going to continue to take over and do more. But I think the next phase, and the phase, is how businesses are going to use this to solve critical problems for their customers, rather than average people like me. I use it to one of my twins, right? He likes a story at the end of the night, and I say, what do you want a story about? And he says, a red tractor. And I say, chat GPT, and I go in there and I say, children's story about a red tractor, and I just read it to him, and he falls asleep fairly quickly.
You're lying. You don't read it to him. You get some other piece of AI to read it to him for you.
May well give him nightmares, right? If a robot starts reading some kind of, but it's like those simple things, right? And look, I could do that every night. It was more of a test, but that gives you an idea of that's like that. There's no real benefit in life, right? To that, that's the most basic use case of it, which most of us will end up with, rather than actually using it for what it could be. So yeah, look, I think we're on an AI journey. First phase is how businesses use it. Look, in the future, maybe we'll all be AI wizards and be able to build all this stuff ourselves.
Cool. Yeah, sensible thoughts, mate. Please read this story in the style of Glen Foster, friendly. but with a hint of if you don't behave, you won't get any Christmas presents. Rebecca, your thoughts on AI? Tackle it however you want. It's a broad subject, however it touches you.
I have a lot of thoughts about AI, and I think it's the same as when, good old Excel came out in the 1980s, and everybody looked at it as this thing that was going to replace a load of jobs, and they're quite afraid in some regard. But I think with AI, it all comes down to, how well are you going to use that? And if you're not somebody who has the time to look into what AI can be used for in the accounting industry, do what I do and find somebody who talks about it a lot online, follow them on LinkedIn and get this summary of the best apps, etc., that are out there. I think we can't get away from it. It's going to be something that's here to stay, and it is powerful, the things it can do. Some of the things I've seen, I thought, flipping heck. I don't think it's going to replace jobs. I don't think that's the case. I think if anything, it's going to force us to move away from the typical, data entry roles into something that's a little bit better, where we can provide more insight to our clients, or, go about things a different way. One of my favorite tools of AI at the moment is, where you used to send out, a PDF document for, say, self-assessment, or, an email saying, can you send me this info, etc. There's quite a few number of apps now where you can create those questions that are interactive for the client to complete, that are not a typical boring PDF form, etc. It takes 2 seconds for them to complete. And I love
is it
that.
Formless? Is that what it's called?
There's there's
Yeah.
a couple of others that are in use, but they're all, I say, it depends on your price point and everything, you know, how much you want to integrate AI into your practice. But it's incredible how much time you can save over here to then use over here with things that you can improve on. So I personally love AI. I love, you know, the changes that I'm starting to see. And I think it's taken us out of these outdated practices that we seem to have had for a number of years. So yeah, I would say embrace AI as much as possible is my thought for 24.
Excellent. Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I know you flagged 2023 as I guess the year of AI. I beg to differ. I think it was the year of talking about AI.
That's a much better title.
Yeah, well,
you promised me spiky points of view, mate. Go on.
Yeah, well, 2022 is when ChatGPT launched, right? Back end of 2022. And then
yeah.
we've just talked about the entire 2023 and what we're going to use it for. But only now we're starting to see it being brought into, I guess, the finance systems that affect us. So Xero doing it, Intuit do it, FreeAgent are doing it. They're starting to bring that in, and not in, like you say, not in this this way that's really going to interfere with what we do. It just makes our life easier. Like if we're trying to search for something, rather than having to search 20 different ways with specific terms to bring up the one thing we want to see, it should now start to appear, right? It's like when Google started to revolutionize our way of searching through the web. And as they bring it hopefully into the Microsoft Office suite, which we should start to see through 2024, as we start, I guess, you know, as normal businesses, if we're on the Microsoft suite, start to use that, we'll just start to have ways it can improve or speed up what we do. The fear that I have with it is just like a lot of automation, a lot of what the cloud accounting stuff did for us, is that it got rid of the more menial tasks, which is actually how most of us learnt how to be accountants, by you know, repetition of doing stuff that in the end bored the hell out of us, but really ingrained it in our heads. That is such a struggle now for training you know, people that are coming through the profession on what they should be doing, what should be looking for. And we expect so much so instantly, because we can just go, oh, if you can't solve it, I'll just turn to this thing that can do it, you know, the machine that can do it for me. So it's a fear from my side as these tools come through, it's going to further challenge how we train our staff, how we bring those junior accountants through to be experienced in our industry.
I totally agree. There was a lot of talk, and I think that people just sort of expect to sort of know how to use it, and actually it doesn't really work like that. You do probably need to invest some time into learn how to prompt these things and what they can do and build a stack around it. The two closing thoughts, well, three actually, we were all kind of talking about this, monkeying around trying to find the real reason for it, and Glenn found the real reason for it, which was bedtime stories. So we're pleased with that. I'm glad we got there before the end of 2023. The two things I would say is just always make sure that the best description I heard of generative AI particularly was treat it like your overconfident, bolshy, but often under-researched good friend. Like they're still your friend, but fact check what they say before you repeat it.
Dave down the pub that gives you the tax advice.
Exactly right. Exactly. I did a post about Dave down the pub on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to go and look at it, it was quite successful. And the second thing I would say is just to touch on something that Rebecca was saying. There's an economic theory called the lump of labour fallacy, which is I'll probably paraphrase it badly, but essentially what it states is that we always sort of think that there's this fixed finite piece of work, and then this new tool arrives, and then we go, well, actually there's this fixed piece of work. That new tool's going to do 3 out of the 10 bits of work, so there's going to be 3 out of 10's worth of people sitting around doing nothing. But that's not what happens, because history would suggest that never happens, because actually, you know, we've still got everybody working, and actually what we do is we find new jobs based on the new tools that we weren't able to do before. And if you like, the agricultural revolution is a good example. You know, like we had tools that we couldn't do things with previously before, so it meant we could farm on a bigger scale. And AI is much the same. Like who would have thought that, you know, like being a prompt tutor was something that you couldn't have done, you know, probably this time last year, it probably wouldn't have been much demand for it, but you know, it found its poster child in ChatGPT, and the rest is history, shall we say. So in the interest of time, again, another topic we could probably sit and talk about all day. Trend 4, social media. I'm just going to jump straight in with Rebecca, because this is a topic I'm interested to hear from you on, particularly because you do stuff on platforms that I know nothing about. So that's predominantly TikTok. I know a little bit about YouTube, but I don't use it other than as a consumer, although I do know a little bit about how it operates. But yeah, I'm really interested in your thoughts on social media trends, however you see fit to tackle that trend.
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to focus on, firstly, a common misconception about social media that I tend to see, and it's that because we're accountants and bookkeepers, that we need to put very techie information out there on social media. But the problem is, when people are using YouTube, in particular TikTok in this instance, at the moment, it's not very educational focused, it's entertainment. So if you're, posting a lot of information that's very techy, people aren't necessarily going to be paying that much attention to it. So I say with all of my social media, what I've always aimed to do is bring personality to the social media. So not just being this boring typical accountant talking about, R&D or something very techy again, talking about actionable things that people can do immediately or little spins of knowledge. But most of the time it's, talking about general life and what it's like being a bookkeeper or accountant, or, stories about helping clients with certain things. And with social media, it's funny the amount of people that talk to me who've got onto it, who, think initially social media looks really easy, doesn't it, from the background, and you see people who've got tens of thousands of followers on LinkedIn as well. But what people don't realize is that social media to some degree can be a bit of a full-time job. And I'd say, I must spend 3 hours a day on social media outside of running the practice and everything else. And that's, searching for topics that are searchable, SEO, what people want to hear about, filming, then editing, then arranging posting and which platform that's going to go on, etc. So there's a lot more to it than first meets the eye, I'd say. But I'm seeing quite a number of bookkeeping and accounting practices doing this really, really well. And as you say, Rachel Harris is one, Stuart Hurst is another. Quite a number. Is it one now? Gravitate.
Sam Newton. I really like
Sam.
a couple of people that I really like is Alan Broom. He is strong opinions, but he will engage in battle where he needs to. But he's I like the way he does it, because everyone knows he's an accountant. He's got that across, but he's just got a nice blend of just chatting about nonsense, like business related stuff, things that are important to businesses. And he's quite open. He's like, I've picked up 55 new clients through LinkedIn, but most of his content's nothing's really about, like, he sort of reluctantly talks about technical stuff where he feels a need to, but it's always nice. Penny Allard's another one I really like. She's often does films herself floating in cold sea, talking about kind of accountancy and penny related stuff. She's got a great story for anyone that wants to go and dive into her stuff. You're right, there's a ton of people out there, and especially in this world where it's quite easy now to spin up content using generative AI. But when people have done it without really kind of thinking, it's very, very obvious when you know what it looks like, covered in emojis, covered in hashtags, and it's just written in a certain style that it's very easy to pick up. So yeah, there are people out there doing it well, and you're right, you don't get a lot of stuff from just posting technical jargon. No. Right?
But you've also, the other thing is you've got to show up. So you can't post, once a week, once a month, and think that's going to gain you any traction in your business. It's not. You've got to show up, not necessarily every day, but you've got to be at least fairly consistent with what you're posting out there and what you're presenting. So, what are people talking about you when you're not in the room? That's the sort of output you want to be giving. But yeah, it's something that you learn as you go with social media. It's interesting.
It's a good opportunity to kind of amplify what you're doing. I only really focus on LinkedIn, and it's most people could probably sit down and go, I've got 5 posts I could put up, or 10 posts. It's like, try doing that for a year or 2 or 5, like I have a system behind how you generate content, and making sure that it's aligned with who you are and your personality. And we all struggle from it sometimes, for trying to write things for the wrong reason, which is something you should always avoid. And ask yourself whether you actually need to do it or not. That same example I come back to talking about with Jordan, which I've mentioned on most of my webinars, is just, do you actually need to do this or not? Don't do it for the sake of it, because it will become drain if it's not something that you're doing for a good reason, right? And there's multiple good reasons, but
yeah, but there's going into 24 again, there's so much opportunity, particularly on TikTok. And again, a misconception about that is that you have to be dancing. I don't dance, I can't dance, and nobody wants to see that either.
Same.
Let's put that out there. But TikTok's now moving away from being this more, you know, short form entertainment content to being very educational and longer form. And they're trying to push that. So if you look at the type of social media that's going on in Asia and sort of that way, they're seeing massive success with that. So they're trying to bring more of educational content into TikTok. So if that's what you want to put out there with your business, you're going to do very well in 24, but definitely worth starting now and getting ahead of the trend.
Interesting. Ryan, any thoughts as a podcaster and a digital disruptor?
Yeah, I echo what Rebecca says. Like, trying to do this and do this effectively is a lot of effort, and you either have to decide to do it or not do it. There's no point dabbling, in my opinion. But be who you are, and vary it. That's the most effective way I've seen. But I focus purely on LinkedIn. I've got quite an addictive personality. Cannot stand TikTok. I end up just losing hours scrolling through endless nonsense for no reason whatsoever. So
absolutely.
You know, pick what you enjoy being on, pick what works for you. But I think there's been a trend to oversell for quite a long time on social media, and I think it's becoming much more obvious to people when others are doing that. The one thing I have seen, especially on LinkedIn, I don't know if people have seen this over the last kind of month, is that they've changed their algorithm, and it's completely unpredictable on what's going to work and what's not going to work anymore. So hopefully that will settle, and there'll be less social media platforms that we have to talk on going into 2024. Consolidation
of social media platforms. Yeah, exactly. Threads can get in the bin, so can X. If anyone knows what that is, that used to be Twitter. Glenn, any thoughts?
Just that Elon's helped with the consolidation, right? Because
he has, yeah.
Huge number of platforms out there. Look, I just not dissimilar to, I guess, Ryan and Rebecca. If you're going to do it, it needs to be deliberate, and then that means it's a marketing strategy, right? It's either all your marketing strategy or it's a facet of it, because you wouldn't rock up in the morning and go, I'm going to send an email out to all of my customers, like offering a special offer today, right? You'd sit down and work out what you wanted to do, when you were going to do it. You'd be deliberate about it. So you can go and hang out on LinkedIn and do a few bits and pieces. I'd probably fall into that camp. But I get, other than like connecting and learning stuff, I get little value commercially back from that. If you want to do it properly and you want the commercial benefit, and people do, right? Whether it's TikTok or LinkedIn, right? People are doing it because they get commercial benefit from it. So it's there. You may not believe it, you may not understand it, but it works, right? And we see it work. So it's double down and figure out if it's the thing for you to do. Then you got to sit down and you've got a plan, because you said, like, coming up with even just 5 pieces of content a month is hard. You got to be creative, right? You got to think about what you're posting out there. You've got to review what you're posting so you can judge what works, what doesn't work, and then like focus that effort just there. So it isn't as simple as just turning up and either dancing on a TikTok or cooking or like going onto LinkedIn and just posting a few thoughts or a random poll. There's a lot more, I think, if you do it properly, and the people that do it well, like Rebecca is, look, takes a lot of time, 3 hours a day apparently, but and also a lot of effort to get this right.
And you've got to have thick skin as well, because someone will take a swing at you sooner or later, I promise you. If you're doing it right, someone will take a swing at you. It's bizarre.
Tony, any engagement is good engagement, good or bad.
Hey, we all saw the Weekends for the Week post, right? I'll block that guy. I couldn't go with it. Right, we're coming towards the end of time. There's a 5th trend. Glenn, this is your one: speed of adoption. That's what you'd like to see talked about or talk about in 2024. So talk me through speed of adoption.
Yeah, I think there's a number of studies out there that talk about now, like, how in a post-COVID era we see this rate of adoption speeding up. And I think in our world, and certainly in my world, like maybe 20 to the year 2020 to 2023 was around just like buying tech, right? More apps, lots more apps, lots more stuff. And now I think it's around doubling down on the things that drive value and making them work well. like within your practice, within your business, whatever it is, because like there's scary numbers about the amount of SaaS products that people run. There's now SaaS products to help you consolidate your billing for your SaaS products, right? Which is just too many of them, right?
How meta.
Yeah, so it's that kind of concept. So I think we'll start to see this. Hey, I've got some core products in my business. I really want to make the most out of them. That means I need to drive kind of that speed of adoption, get the most out of them really, really well. So I think, yeah, next year we'll start to see that, as maybe people aren't like as cash rich as they've been before to just go out and buy new products. They'll really focus on make the most of what they already pay for and already own.
There's a guy in the industry, is a good pal of mine, and I'm sure probably everybody on the panel knows him, John Jenkins, and he's rabid about this idea of like this gap between what we've bought and what we've actually making the most of, and it is very true. Anyone wants to get into it with him, I'm sure he'd be very happy to talk about that sort of stuff. And it's so true. Like if you're not making the most of the stuff that you're already using, why buy more stuff, right? And, I have this phrase, the tech splat, which is where you end up with tons of bits of stuff that you're not using properly, right? Ryan, your thoughts on this idea of speed of adoption and running a bit faster and better with the things that we're already using rather than just buying more stuff?
Yeah, well, this comes out of COVID, doesn't it? We had to react. So many businesses just went, oh, I have to do something, get everything. And so you have a plethora of different systems out there that are doing certain things. And I talked to one business recently and they had 3 CRMs. I said, what's the point of that? Duplicating information. I know it's just because they'd used it for different bits, but each system could do all 3 of the things they were trying to do. It's because they just reacted really, really quickly to try and solve a pain point without thinking strategically about what they're trying to achieve. So consolidation with speed of adoption kind of comes hand in hand to some extent. The bit that I'm seeing a lot of is not necessarily getting the most out of what systems they've got, but reassessing, do we need this system? What is the problem we're trying to solve with this? Is it something that we can be done in another system that we've got? So people are actually thinking more strategically about where they are. And I think that come out partly from, the economy and the effect on businesses. We're trying to cut our overheads to some extent. Can we cut our IT budget and think more strategically on it? A lot of the times with what I do, I find that you might get rid of a couple bits of software. You might then bring in 2 or 3 that replace that much more effectively. But it does mean you can streamline how you operate and you can use your staff more effectively, especially if you're struggling to recruit, which seems to be a massive problem throughout most businesses that I encounter.
Thank you, mate. Rebecca, your thoughts?
Yeah, as I said before, I think it's, the key thing is you're going to have all of these different AI tools, CRM, etc., but it's how you use them and also how effectively you use them. So, I work with a lot of other bookkeepers and accountants, and again, they've got tons of app stacks in the background that they're not using or they're not integrating, or they don't talk to each other in any way. And the thing is, it's having the time to sit down and say, am I effectively using these, or do we need more training for staff on the different CRM systems, etc., that we have? So I think it's just finding the time. I think if you find the time for these things, you can get that done. But just saying willy-nilly, we need to do X, and then having no strategic plan of how you're going to do it is not going to do you any favors. But I think we can all improve in this area, myself included.
It astonishes me, right? So I've worked with accountancy firms for nearly a decade and worked deeply in them to implement various different systems through the years, which is kind of my background in this space before I moved into the role that I do now. And it never ceases to astonish me how, initially the problem was staff, right? And we've got staff who like doing something in a certain way. We've made a decision to use this product, and they don't want to come along on the ride because really what they care about is being able to do their job confidently, right? And I can completely understand that, because they're not going to have any more money in the back pocket by using this other piece of software, but it is going to cause them a headache in the short term because they don't know how to use it. I understand that. And then what now seems to have happened is that doesn't necessarily seem to have be quite the case anymore, and that actually the industry is more comfortable with this idea of cloud and, you know, and the new tools that we've got, and that technology is a much bigger thing than it used to be. But there's this disconnect in so many firms between the people who make the decision about wanting to move this project, but then by lack of a system in place to manage it, the decisions around how the building blocks are put in place around, oh, choose that bit of software for that client, or that bit of software for that client, or not choose that bit of software for that client, are devolved to the people who are doing the day-to-day work, because that system of decision is non-existent or broken. And the firms that work well and move this thing fast and get it adopted are where that system works, and it's like, we're not going to allow you to do this in whatever way or shape or form, you know, that takes, not necessarily as draconian as, you know, being all stick, but it's a case of, you know, involving the staff and making sure they've got the right training, and it's never a one and done, right? Russell from Assets, Russell Frainer was, it has to be a living thing, right? It has to live and breathe this change thing. It's not just use this bit of kit and that's the end of it, right? Because they will continue to use the bit of kit they've already done until you make them comfortable. And I think that there does seem to be a slight move more towards, now that there's this acceptance of this being here, that actually those systems are, you know, they're not there, but they need to be, and perhaps we're moving in the right direction. So
yeah, but I think if you don't, I've seen it time and time again in both practice and industry, that if you don't get everybody involved in adoption, you know, even, you know, somebody who's been there 2 days, the junior members of staff, etc., then it's less likely that they're going to use it properly or be as engaged as they could be. So yeah, I don't think the decisions for adoption of a CRM, etc., should just be left up here. I think everybody needs to be involved to get that moving. Totally
agree. Now, we could probably sit here and yarn on about sustainability and you know, breadth of AI connections and all that kind of stuff. These were the topics that we eventually settled on out of a list out of about 20, and probably there's tons more. So we're coming to close of the webinar slightly over time, so I'm going to launch the third poll. So if you would like, where's it gone? Keeps moving around the poll thing for me. So let's launch this poll. There we go. So if you'd like, if you're an accountant, bookkeeper, and practitioner would like to find out more about kind of FreeAgent partner, then just pop that in there and we will be able to help you. There weren't that many cues that came through the question. Do you favour TikTok or YouTube, Rebecca?
Oh, I am a YouTube girly. It's got to be YouTube. But I think TikTok's more for the, you know, well, at the moment, as is, you know, the skipping through 2-second videos. I prefer longer form. And yeah, YouTube's my baby. So
and also the partner, the way they work with the creators on YouTube is a lot more inclusive, isn't it? Than
definitely, they're more supportive.
And have been sort of for a long time, whereas other platforms less so, I believe. So cool. That poll is continued to run for just a few more seconds, maybe a few more people that would like to answer. We haven't had a bunch of Q&A. If you have got any questions, sling them in now. Thank you, very useful webinar, really interesting session. Sorry, I got to jump off. That's cool. So we are at the end of the main part of the webinar now, so if you want to sling your thanks in, that is more than welcome. Let me just end that poll. There we go. And then sorry folks, I have a bit of a, let's get rid of that. Sorry, seems to have, just bear with me a sec. Just have stopped working my slides. Oh, that's really strange. Sorry folks. Right. So thank you. So this is the end of the webinar for the main part, but we'll jump into the demo in a second. So I want to just say thank you to my panelists. They've been absolutely awesome. We could have sat and yarned on for the entire day, I'm sure, no problem whatsoever. Really insightful as always, and thank you very much for giving up your time today. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all the participants who've joined us today. Huge thanks again for giving up your time to listen to us, and hopefully it was of value. If you want to express your thoughts in the chat, that'd be much appreciated. And just a big thanks to Mark, to Teresa, to Claire, and to everybody in sort of FreeAgent who puts all this stuff on, the design team, the comms team, the sales team. There's a huge amount of work that goes into these webinars beyond just Tony turning up and yarning on for an hour as a gun for hire. So and I don't do much of it. So huge thanks to everybody that puts all the effort in behind the scenes to get these things set up and everybody moving along for them. So this is the end of the normal part of the webinar now. So panelists and those of you that are familiar with FreeAgent, you're more than welcome to drop off now. And then we will spend the next 5 or 10 minutes just having a quick look through FreeAgent, and there'll be one final poll and then full time on the full webinar. So thank you very
Tony.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca. Cheers, Glenn.
Take care.
Ryan's already gone. Cheers. There we go. Boom. If somebody could put in the chat box that they can see my FreeAgent dashboard, that would be much appreciated. Excellent. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Alan. Perfect. Right, so quick look and feel. This is the, let me just zoom in, because I think we could get a bit closer in than that. That's not where I want to zoom in. Let's go with that. There we go. So this is FreeAgent, folks. So this is the accountant's dashboard. This is where we log in. This is where our clients are held. You'll notice you've got my clients. You've now got groupings as well, so we can group clients, which is a new feature for FreeAgent and not that old. Alerts, account managers. So alerts, this is, I think, going to get some attention this year. It tells you when certain level of unexplained bank transactions have been hit, or when your VAT return is due, or if you're about to exceed the VAT threshold. You can set up those kind of things in there. But what we're going to do is we are going to jump straight into a client, just have a quick look around in FreeAgent. There we go. So this is FreeAgent. This is what we call the overview screen, or some of you may know it as the dashboard. There we go. And we've got these various different widgets that we've got. We can drag and drop these into different places if we want to. We've got P&L here. We've got sort of invoices, bills, and estimates. I fiddled around with mine and moved all the sort of transactional stuff onto one widget, and then the tax timeline sits here. So tax timeline is a really cool feature that FreeAgent has that we get loads of good feedback on. It's had a bunch of improvements recently, so you can now mark things as filed and mark things as paid on the tax timeline, which is really cool. Like, this is a limited company, so it just shows you when your CT is due, when your income tax is due, when your VAT's due, all that kind of stuff, which is great. And then what we're going to do is just going to jump straight into banking. And let's go into this bank account. There we go. Let's run some transactions. There we go. So this is banking within FreeAgent. So within FreeAgent, we have all these different bank feeds that you can connect up to. So we just added a couple of new ones, Metro Bank and American Express. Metro Bank is, so we're the first to market with an open banking bank feed with Metro Bank. You might have seen direct feeds in a couple of our competitors, but we've helped Metro Bank to move that sort of along in the right direction. About 30 banks there that we integrate with, not just the NatWest ones, which is a common question that we get. So this is where you start pulling the transactions within to FreeAgent, and you'll notice you've got some green ones and then some red ones. And then what you will also see on a live license is you'll see some orange ones as well, which are sat there for approval. So FreeAgent has I talked about AI. FreeAgent has an AI algorithm baked into it, which we call Guess. And there are 2 bits to Guess. What Guess does is essentially it, based on your previous behaviors and transaction history, it will go, right, okay, if you keep putting Cool Beans coffee to accommodation and meals, then it will start to do that for you. What it also does is it looks at the overall population of people that use FreeAgent, and it spots trends within there that happen with a high degree of frequency and a high degree of commonality. So it will say, right, okay, for example, like Network Rail was greater than 95% of the time people put Network Rail to travel, so we started to get FreeAgent to do that for you. Which has been really helpful. So now we're up to somewhere in the region of 65% of day one transactions that are explained by the Guess algorithm within FreeAgent. And then they sit around about 92 to 95% accuracy, depending on the ebbs and flows a little bit, but somewhere in between those 2 numbers. And what it will do is just categorizes the transactions for you, sticks it under for approval, it allows you to then go in and see what's been categorized by FreeAgent. Couple of other bits and pieces. So we've added a few new reports over time. So it's performance benchmarking report, which basically allows you to see where your business compares in comparison to what it's been doing previously, but also where your business compares to other similar businesses in your geography and field, which is really helpful, and that's been in there for a little while now. And then we've also added a bank rec. We've also added an audit trail. You can do stuff and show transactions. Has now got like a custom range in there and the bits and pieces. So the reporting stuff's getting an overhaul likely this year. Bunch of improvements we're going to make to it. That sort of work is being discovered at the moment. And then for those of you that potentially have not used FreeAgent before, maybe have seen it in the past, we added a feature last year and we've just added a big update to it called Smart Capture. And what Smart Capture does, come into the files area, is you'll notice here it's got Smart Capture. So what Smart Capture does is you take a photo of your receipt, and then it pulls off the receipt for you, pulls off the value and the date, and then it will either allow you to create an expense or it'll allow you to attach that transaction over to it will automatically attach that receipt to the transaction if it can find a match with dates and amounts and stuff like that. So and it pulls the stuff off automatically for you, so you don't have to enter it. So really good for those like smaller businesses that have got a few transactions each month, or maybe a few more than a few, and it'll allow you to just take photos of it and just extracts the data from the receipt and then attaches it to the transaction. It's really cool. With some really good feedback on it. So and this was just designed for a few minutes just to give you a quick look and feel of FreeAgent. As I said, the important things I guess about FreeAgent are that we're very much focused on the micro entity, so from 0 employees up to 10, but we're going to start to stretch that out in 2024 a little bit, so it'll be a bit bigger. We're going to plug a few of the bits and pieces that we think we can improve on. As I said, if you're a bank with NatWest or a customer's bank with NatWest, then you can have the core product for free, and there's a couple of add-ons that you can potentially add on for some extra money. So I'm going to run the one final poll. So for the near 100 of us that have stayed on, much appreciated. I'm going to run the final poll now. So if anybody was on the fence and just wanted one last opportunity to say, yes, I'd like somebody from FreeAgent to get in touch, then please just hit yes now. There's no obligation. We're a friendly bunch. If it doesn't work for your clients or it's not the right time or whatever it might be, there's no pressure. There's no hard sell with FreeAgent. But yeah, I would hate for you to miss out. So yeah, I'll let that run for a little bit more, and then we'll call time on the webinar. So if you've got anything and you want to put in the chat, any questions you want to ask or anything, there we go. So there was a question from Rebecca as to how do you add the tax timeline. So I'll actually show you, and I think I probably know what is. So when you start, when you just log into FreeAgent, it looks more like this. So it'll look more like this. You'll have invoices on one side, bills on the other. You'll have a profit and loss, and then the tax timeline will be buried there underneath the P&L. So I like the tax timeline, so I moved it onto the second widget and then moved bills over there, so that you've got all of the transactional stuff there, and then the tax timeline showed at the front, and then the profit and loss showed at the front as well. So yeah, if you want to give that a go, if you're still on, Rebecca, if you can let me know if you've seen that would be great. Sean just mentioned a couple of new features that we've got. So we've just added an Amazon integration as well, the Smart Capture stuff. The Amazon integration is brilliant for FBA, like fulfilled by Amazon. It's free currently, and you can integrate it and it will pull all the transactional data through. It's been really well received. We've made adjustments to the tax timeline. The reporting stuff's coming. Depreciation's getting an update. Yeah, there's loads of cool stuff coming on in the practices space. So wicked. So there's an anonymous attendee who said about essentially being able to open more than one window. So there's two questions actually. I'll tackle the second one first. So does the software support CIS? Yes. So we support subcontractor CIS, and we are going to be building out the bookkeeping part of contractor CIS within 2024. So probably won't be able to file it through FreeAgent, certainly not by the end of 2024 anyway, but the bookkeeping piece is on course to be delivered in 2024 from the contractor side, and we already support the subcontractor side. So then a question about, I work with Xero. Most irritating thing is not being able to have more than one window open and being able to go between the P&L and say the sales ledger. Can FreeAgent offer more than one window? So if we go through to reports, let me go through to there, we can open that in the new window. So what you just need to make sure is that you can refresh the screens, and then it will pull through to the other tabs as well. What I would say is be very mindful of, you should never open more than one license in the same browser. So if you want to open 2 separate licenses at the same time, I would strongly advise against it. It is doable in separate, like if you use 2 different, like Chrome and Safari or incognito mode, you can do it, but that doesn't sound like the question that was being asked here. Yeah, you can do it. Just open it in a new tab. It's actually how you should use it. So like it's easier to do it like that than if you're using different documents and stuff, but just make sure you keep refreshing. But yeah, as I said, don't try and open more than one license at a time, because it gets very confusing and you could end up entering the wrong data into the wrong license, which is not really where you want to be. So cool. Hopefully that answers your question, anonymous attendee. And I will. The questions is answered. I think, did I end the poll? I did not end the poll. Last chance, folks. Anyone that wants to say yes on the get in touch, and I'll end the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Veronica, you will get the recording sent out to you in your follow-up. Perfect. Thank you very much for your time and attention, folks. And there's no nice way to do this, but we're going to call time.